It's weird. It came to my phone, but not to my computer.
So, Joe, were you and the woman's name was Madeline?
Megan.
Megan, yes. Madeline's my
Megan.
daughter.
Oh,
Okay.
I'm on
My
her
daughter.
computer.
my daughter was popping up too on mine. Last meeting, she put HackerOne on.
Yeah.
They wouldn't let me in.
Great. Welcome.
Okay, you
Thank
folks
you
are recording and on the air. I'm going to leave you to your business.
Thanks very much. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Lori. All right, it's 7:01 p.m. This is John Pumphrey, Chairman of the Finance Committee. This is our Finance Committee meeting. Just a note to the audience, those maybe watching at home or those that want to review this later, this is an open meeting, although it is remote. Folks can get copies of the minutes, which will be available in the town hall as soon as they are reviewed and voted on by the Finance Committee. You can also watch the Finance Committee meeting on WRPS, which I believe we may be live on their YouTube channel right now. So that's exciting. All right, so with that, for our agenda for February 3rd, 7 p.m. Is to have the budget presentation from the accounting department and town administrators. So we've got Biz and we've got Doug here. We'll review any transfer requests. None have been sent to me. I'm not anticipating any. And we'll review our calendar again as we prepare and roll towards town meeting on May 3rd. We'll take a walk through some of the department head assignments. And again, just kind of reiterate what our plan is to go forward. We're also joined by a guest, Megan. Thanks for joining us. We appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Evaluating the Finance Committee.
Yeah.
Potential volunteer opportunity, and we certainly welcome those types of guests at all times. But thank you for joining us. All right, with that, let me see. Did we get Julie yet?
Julie's here. Can't hear her though. I think she's on mute.
Here's Julie. All right, good. All right, so we've got Julie, we've got Bill Principe, we've got Craig, Joe, Jeff, we've got Sheila, Lori. Bobby is not going to be attending. He's not feeling well tonight. I talked to him on the phone. He just said he wasn't going to feel up to attending. And I don't have Bill Stewart. Bill, it is Bill Stewart. Okay, we've got Bill Stewart.
Yeah, I'm here.
All right, I already said Lori. I think that's everyone. If anybody else is on, let me know. And with that, I guess I'll turn it over. Biz or Doug, do you know who's going to be sharing on your side to kind of do the presentation? Is that going to be you, Doug?
Yeah, I think I'll kick it off. Biz and I obviously have been working very closely on all this. So I'm going to
That sounds good. If everyone could kind of maybe mute while Doug goes through the presentation, and then if need be, unmute and ask your question.
Great. And can you maybe, John, just give me a thumbs up if you can see the pop. Great. Okay, so this is the same presentation that we gave the Board of Selectmen last night. So I thought it'd be helpful to give you guys the same big picture general overview. And both Biz and I are here to try to answer any other questions you have at the end of this. So the first thing we thought we'd do is just very quickly recap what we had to do in FY21 when the pandemic hit us after we had already prepared a good sound budget. As you all remember, we were forced to rely on one-time sources of revenue to balance our operating budget. So we had to pull from stabilization and OPEB and free cash. And I know none of us liked having to do that, but the whole purpose of a rainy day fund is to belly out when it's raining, and it was obviously raining really hard. So, we were forced to do that, but we knew that was not a sustainable practice going forward. So as we're going into FY22 and looking at some of our budget objectives, the first one is really to avoid using one-time sources of funds again, like we did last year. We really want to try to avoid that, quite simply because, as you know, it's just not sustainable going forward. Another key objective for us is to prevent any furloughs and layoffs. We are pretty thinly staffed, and we just don't really have anywhere to cut without really significantly affecting services that we provide to the public. So we really want to try to prevent furloughs and layoffs if at all possible. Now, one thing Biz and I have generally mentioned before, and we want to talk a little bit more about now, is that we do want to start the discussion about pursuing enterprise funds for both water and sewer. And so I'm not sure how familiar some of you are with enterprise funds. Some may be more familiar than others. But just generally, it's a tool that's recommended by the Department of Revenue and by our auditors. And the prime examples that DOR gives for enterprise funds are utilities like water and sewer. And the whole point is these are separate kind of entities, separate sort of businesses where they generate their own revenue to cover their own expenses. And the way things are now, where revenue gets commingled with the general fund, technically at the end of the year, any surplus revenue or retained earnings should be technically currently getting scooped up by the general fund, which would obviously not be good for the water or sewer departments. They need to be able to retain those surplus revenues and retained earnings so that they can build them up and make the necessary capital improvements and investments they have to do in the future. But to do that, we're really not accounting for it properly. And the right way to do it is with an enterprise fund. And so the way it would work is town meeting would vote to establish the separate enterprise funds, and then they're treated as their own separate entity. So all the revenue that they generate stays within their fund, and any surplus or retained earnings at the end of the year stays there, and they can accumulate it over time so that they can build up reserves to pay for their future capital projects. And when Biz and I mentioned this at a previous Board of Selectmen meeting, this matter came up at one of the other meetings. I think it may have been a water commissioners meeting, and someone from the public expressed concern that, oh, watch out, town hall is trying to steal the revenue from these departments. And it's literally the exact opposite from that. What we're really trying to do is to preserve the revenue in the water and sewer so it stays in those respective enterprises. And then related to that is just the fact that from the accounting end, on the back end, what Biz does every day, it makes the accounting significantly easier for her, so she doesn't have to uncommingle funds that are put in together, and it really makes the reporting a lot cleaner. So Biz can talk a lot more about it, but that's like a big picture on the enterprise funds. We've started the discussion with the waterworks. Biz and I met with Joe Lapointe, the superintendent, had a thorough discussion with him, and he's very supportive. It makes sense to him. He's going to bring it back to his commissioners, and I expect that we'll likely be able to have that on the warrant for the upcoming annual town meeting in May to do this. On the sewer side, it's a little bit more complicated because that department is in a little bit more transition right now. They're in the process of interviewing and hiring a new sewer superintendent. And I didn't want to kind of get in the middle of that process because that's, critically important. So I think we need to wait a little bit for them to get that superintendent on board. Then we'll reach out to those commissioners and through the superintendent and have a similar discussion. Hopefully we can do both of them this May. If not, if we have to maybe stagger it and just do water this May and sewer next year, that's fine. At least we're moving in the right direction. But this is something that, the DOR has flagged to Biz since day one that it was something that we need to look toward. So we can certainly talk more about that later. And then a little footnote at the bottom I put on because folks do ask, well, what about the CARES Act? Isn't that just taking care of everything? And just as a reminder, CARES Act is really strictly limited to only reimbursing our direct COVID-related expenses, but most importantly, it has to be expenses that were not budgeted for. So for example, we can't just use the CARES Act to pay for our health agent salary, or to pay for, things that were already included in the budget. It can only be things that were unexpected direct COVID-related expenses, like cleaning, those types of things. Vaccine clinics, testing clinics, that type of thing.
Hey, Doug,
Oh, sure.
okay, just 2 quick questions. One is, would CARES Act funding is allowed to cover unintended overtime, like unanticipated overtime that's directly related to COVID?
I'll let Biz answer that because she's working most closely on the submissions.
Technically, no, if it's already budgeted. However, if the fire department has an officer go down due to a COVID-6 situation, then we can backfill and cover that overtime through the CARES Act. But typical overtime, no. One of the most important things that we are covering through our CARES Act funding is the remote teachers with all the remote learning and the technology and the things that the school needed. That's a significant portion of what we spend our money on. But typically overtime, no, unless it's for a specific purpose. And everything that we're doing, we pretty much have approved before we authorize departments to spend.
So, and if I understand things correctly on the water and sewer, I understand there's a benefit on the accounting side, but we're obviously not creating any more funds.
No,
But should we anticipate that if the water and sewer department do build up money in an enterprise fund, that we'll see less long-term, bonds that they put out there to cover projects, or that we would see that those projects would come off of our books and kind of go onto their books? Like, is that the direction you're going?
The projects right now are on the sewer, the water department books.
Okay,
And the sewer department books. We have separate accounting through the accounting system, and this is more of a drive to untangle us when we file with the Department of Revenue each year.
okay.
When we file for our recap.
All right, so
the
it's
architect is separate.
it's strictly streamlining the back of the house to make things easier. And I'm all for that. That's great.
From an audit purpose and a DOR reporting purpose, correct?
Can I ask a question? I mean, in a nutshell, kind of what's the difference between the enterprise funds that you want to establish and the current reserve funds for the water and sewer?
Okay, they don't have what's called reserve funds. When we do our budgets, when we're filing with the Department of Revenue, there's different levels that you file. Right now, the water and sewer are tangled with our general fund appropriation on our recap. If they were separated, there would be an enterprise fund, which is self-sustaining, which would not be tangled. Right now, we do our local receipts for the DOR include the water and sewer enterprise funds, but we have them in a special reserve fund. So in order for me to legally separate them from the general fund, this is the step that we have to take.
So it's more of an accounting thing.
It's more of an accounting thing. It leaves everything exactly the same. There'll be no changes in the front other than a new legal designation. That's
Would it
the
have any,
only
would
thing.
it have any effect on articles that the water and sewer department submit at town meeting?
Nope.
That
it would
not
be the
taken out of
same
reserve?
thing. Nope, they're taking it out of their undesignated fund, it's called undesignated fund retained earnings for an enterprise fund. They'll be taking it from the same spot where they do now.
Okay.
I just have one question on the enterprise funds where they operate like a business. How do capital projects work? Do those come out? Are those covered separately, or do those come out of the retained earnings?
They're capital projects, like if we're doing a sewer upgrade or whatever, that comes out of the retained earnings. So one of the things that needs to be looked at too is, we've discussed this with the water department, is setting up a capital reserve for them so they start saving money to go towards their future capital projects, rather than going straight to their retained earnings, or in the town's category, it would be taking it straight from free cash. So they start saving for the future is part of the aspect.
So they're just really appropriating their retained earnings for capital projects?
Correct.
Okay. Now on the enterprise funds, are they managed separately? Do they have their own management, or is it just still, is it, you know what I'm saying?
Yes, the total setup of the two organizations remain the same. You have your Board of Commissioners still, for both Abington and Rockland for the joint. And it comes down to strictly an accounting situation. And it separates the water and sewer from the general fund. So they have to be self-sustaining, which they are self-sustaining now, so as to continue the self-sustaining. And if, God forbid, there's a problem and they run into a deficit, then of course, like right now, the general fund would still have to help with the deficit. But it's strictly an accounting mechanism. It's no changes to any operations, nothing. It all
No.
remains the same.
No change to the way they still have to report any capital expenditures to the capital planning committee and put them on the capital plan.
Nothing changes at all. It's like I said, it's just a reporting aspect, separating it out for audit purposes and for Department of Revenue tax recap purposes. Everything else remains the same.
And what about trash? would that still, has that been talked about, possibly creating an enterprise fund for that, or would that fall under Board of Health still?
Right now, I'll let Doug speak to that. We aren't really examining it at the time, but I'll let Doug speak
Yeah,
to
no, I think that's something down the road we can look at for sure. I think water and sewer are kind of better set up for it now financially. But I think in the future, if we can successfully get through these, that's something we should examine. Yes. All right, great. And I'll just say, lastly, on enterprise funds, I had experience with this in the last town that I was in. The two of the biggest ones was the town marina and the town-owned golf course. And one of the main purposes was, well, it's similar because they were kind of businesses that operated, they generated their own revenue to cover their own costs. And also because taxpayers that didn't use the marina or didn't use the golf course, they didn't want to have to subsidize it. So they wanted it to really be its own self-sustaining entity. And so it's similar concept here. And when we can share some info from the DOR, and again, the first examples they give are water and sewer types of utilities.
Right. And I've had 6 enterprise funds at my last employment. So it's something I'm well versed in and keeping them separate, and that's the goal.
So this next slide 4, I think is really one of the more important ones in this presentation. And I hope you forgive my little use of emojis, but I just tried to lighten it up a little bit with some easy ways to know what's good and bad here. So one good thing, the timing is everything, is our first marijuana dispensary, Canavana, has been open for business now for several months. But of course, the sales tax reporting that goes through the state before it gets to us, there's always a delay with that and gets filtered into us quarterly. But we have, finally received our first quarterly payment of the local sales tax revenue. So this is a really good thing for the town. I mean, this is a recurring revenue stream, and this is definitely helping to reduce the impact of the budget deficit that we're looking at. And I know there are some impacts, and of course, the most obvious impact is traffic. For those of you that go down Weymouth Street when they're busy, you'll see a police detail managing traffic. But just so everybody's aware, it's the private business is paying for the police detail, not the town. But this revenue is something that it's nice for me walking in after the fact, after all the work's been done, by the town to vote this in and to negotiate the prior host community agreements. But this is a good thing financially speaking. And there's a second one, Health Circle is going to be opening up probably in about another week. They're going to be located at 21 Commerce Road. So this revenue is only going to increase. So that's been helpful.
Commerce, that's right around the corner from the current one, right?
Yeah, well, it's all got to be zoned in the same district. So it's
Yeah,
that kind of area in town. And there are 2 others that we have a total of 4 companies that the Board of Selectmen have signed host community agreements with. And they're all in that same vicinity again, because it's got to be in that overlay district. The next item was just the South Shore VOTEC assessment that came in essentially flat year to year. So that's a good thing that's helpful. Now, one big thing that we're very disappointed in is the governor's preliminary cherry sheet. When the governor's budget came out, we were in the schools, we're expecting a significant increase in Chapter 70 year to year associated with the Student Opportunities Act. And, we all got the emails, clicked on them and looked at the website, and our jaw, hit the ground because we're essentially flat year to year. There was basically no increase at all. So that was really devastating. We were expecting a substantial increase, and Biz and I immediately met with Dr. Cron and Jane Hackett, and it appears, I'm not very well versed in this, but what I've learned is that it appears that where we had previously qualified for the Student Opportunities Act, due to some very minor changes in enrollment as a result of COVID, it seemed to potentially just tip the scales just enough that bumped us out. So we're apparently not eligible under the current formula. So, the school department, Dr. Cron and Jane they're all over it. They've already been talking to DESE, excuse me, to pursue a correction of this, because it's not only affecting Rockland, it's affecting a number of other towns. Just a few students and families that may choose to homeschool their child during a pandemic. The town shouldn't be penalized for, what we were expecting. We've also reached out to Senator Keenan to explain to him, what needs to be corrected. because it's just not equitable. When you see the big picture, what the governor and the legislature talk about are these increases to fund that. When you're really looking at the detail, there's many communities, just in Plymouth County alone, that are getting nothing that, that should have. So the little bottom one there, crossing our fingers, hoping for a Chapter 70 increase in House Ways and Means, that's really probably going to be the biggest driver that's going to affect any potential changes in our budget between now and town meeting. So I assure you, we're going to work hard to help the schools get our fair share on that. Just a budget overview again, we have the standard process where we've requested budget request forms from all department heads, but as you'll see when you start talking to individual departments, we knew we were walking into a big deficit, mainly because of last year's use of one-time funds. Couldn't continue to do that again. So, department heads are not asking for much because we told them don't ask for much because the money's just simply not going to be there. So you'll see that when you talk to them. And on the salary front, all of our unions, as well as all the school unions, all those collective bargaining agreements are up at the end of June. So we're all going to be on both sides. We're going to be negotiating a lot of different contracts. And then as I've talked about since day one, since I've been here, some department heads still have individual employment contracts, which we're obviously going to honor in our proposed budget. Others that are expiring, as I've been working with the Board of Selectmen, those are those employees that moved to at-will employees without the individual employment contracts. So a big picture, after working with Biz and the rest of our financial team and projecting all of our revenues and our expenses, we're looking at a grand total townwide budget deficit of $690,000. Just as we do with revenues coming in, when we have to make cuts, we have the 70-30 split with the town and the school, and you can see the proportions there, 207,000 on the town side and 483,000 on the school side. So the way it looks for the town budget, first we look at the revenues coming in. Our share of the new revenues, the 30%, is a little over 170,000. And we have to, make up for the 207,000 in cuts. So we're looking at a year-to-year decrease of over $36,000. And on the school side, similarly, because they get a larger share, their year-to-year decrease is larger, and that's over $85,000. So while that number, 85,000, or on the previous page, 36,000, may not seem like a big number, as you all know, expenses go up every year, and when you have less funding to go around, it makes it hard. So the way that and let me say one more thing, it's about the schools. I'm obviously not going to speak to how the school department is going to manage that. Dr. Cron and Jane Hackett will come in, and speak to their side of the ledger. But on the town side, we're, after going through all the budgets with Biz and department heads, we're looking at three major areas to make up our gap. The first is in the town meeting and elections budget. We're able to cut this without negatively affecting anything because last year we had, the big major federal presidential election, we had primaries, we had all the early voting, et cetera. We're just not, we don't have the same number of elections, and, hopefully we're not going to have a special town meeting. So we confirmed this with Liza Landy, the assistant town clerk, and we should be good this year to be able to cut that by $20,000. As I've mentioned before, our regional public safety dispatching center out of Holbrook was successfully able to obtain a fantastic grant from the state 911 committee, which is going to completely cover, currently it's completely covering our regional dispatch costs, which are about $300,000. Now, it's a 4 or 5 year grant, so we definitely expect to continue to receive that full level of funding over the next few years. Technically, we do have to reapply for it each year, so the money's not in the bank yet, but there's, it's a separate funding stream from 911 telephone bills, so there's no reason to believe we won't get it. But to be prudent, we went back and forth, with Biz and I and Chief Duffy about should we take, all the cuts out of this or only a portion, and we're opting here to, essentially only take to count half of that savings, just hedging our bets a little bit, just to make sure, just in case something goes south, it'll be, only half the pain that we'll have to do to make it up. But again, we fully expect that we'll be able to get that grant again next year, and of course the remaining amount of that appropriation will just be returned and ultimately turned into free cash. And then the delta, the remainder of the cut we're recommending we take out of the highway department materials and hired equipment, mainly because Dave Taylor does an excellent job, and you know, he's probably most able out of all the departments to absorb a number like that with flexibility, depending on all the different contracts and projects that he has going on. Moving on to, you know, sources of revenue and expenses, I like to do some pie charts each year, mainly just not so much for the absolute values, but just to look at the proportions of where our money comes from and where it goes. So on the property tax side, it's about 55%. The state aid portion for us is over a quarter. It's over 26%, which, relatively speaking, compared to some other communities, you know, it is a lot. You know, local receipts at 11 is a big one, and our debt exclusion portion, that 8%, is a little bigger than it was last year. You know, mainly because we started the borrowing for the school construction project. But obviously, you know, between property taxes and state aid, you know, that's well over 3/4 of our budget revenue. And then on the expense side, obviously education is appropriately so and always our largest expense category. This percentage, 41%, I do want to note, in addition, the biggest part of that is obviously the Rockland Public Schools, but that also includes South Shore VOTEC, and Norfolk Agricultural School and their transportation, just because I thought it's more helpful just to lump in all of education together. Does not include the benefits associated with education. All the benefits, town side and school side, are in that benefits number there. That's 19%. And then obviously, you know, benefits are big. Public safety is a large sector. And then again, our debt service has gone up, and it's going to continue to go up because of the school project. But all these proportions, these are very similar across all towns. We're not unique in that regard. Just some future planning issues as we, you know, plan on having our annual town meeting, the normal first Monday in May. We'll likely recommend to the selectmen that they reduce the quorum again, assuming the governor's state of emergency is still in effect, just to give us that flexibility. I don't really know what the turnout's going to be like, if more people are getting vaccines or people are just getting more comfortable living with COVID. You know, this was more geared toward the selectmen since they put out the warrant, but just that we'll be prepared working with WRPS to have overflow rooms if needed. We're not going to really get into too much about uses of free cash or articles because we're still waiting for the Department of Revenue to certify our free cash. They're a little backlogged this year. But one of the things we wanted to highlight was just that, you know, there's a couple of things we're going to have to do right off the top. We're going to have to cover any required contractual buyouts. We're going to have to cover any snow and ice deficits. And that's one thing Biz and I have talked about is when funds are available, we'd like to increase the regular snow and ice budget a little bit so we can reduce the reliance on free cash for funding those deficits. I mean, it's good that we're able to deficit spend snow and ice because it is so variable. But if we know every year there's hundreds of thousands of dollars that we know we're going to go over, we might as well try to start beefing up that budget so we can have more flexibility with free cash. Also, if we have the funding, we'd like to put some money back into OPEB and stabilization, which I know this committee would support, because it's always a goal to increase those reserves, and that's certainly going to continue to help our credit rating, which helps reduce our borrowing costs in the future. And then this last sub bullet was an idea that Biz has brought forward, which I do think is a good one, which is looking at the potential to create an additional stabilization fund, specifically a capital stabilization fund. So we'd have the regular stabilization fund for just generic kind of emergencies like we had to do, you know, last year with the operating budget, but have a separate one where we can just start planning, just socking away a savings account for large capital items or capital projects and reduce the need, again, for either eating up most of our free cash or even potentially, you know, small debt exclusions or things like that. So this next slide is a list of all the capital requests that have been put in. The first line is a combination of prior approved articles that have passed town meeting, but were the first year or prior year for a multi-year lease purchase. So that included in that 73,000 is the fire department's admin vehicle lease payment and then a number of school sped vans. So it's just, you know, highlighting that, you know, that's something that'll have to come right off the top. And then I'm not going to really get into too much detail here. We'll do that more later when Biz and I actually get our certified free cash and we kind of figure out what we can and can't do. You know, there's, you know, the town capital projects, the recycling center road, that's the phase 2 to finish off that road. That's something I really hope we can accomplish this year because that will really benefit almost all residents. Two items in particular that I'm going to talk about on the next slide is the fire department's new fire engine for $600,000 and the highway department street improvements, Spring Street, Summer and Beach Street for $550. Those are two large ones, which I just do not think we're going to have enough free cash to be able to accommodate both of those in a year. So I'm going to talk about those a little bit more in a moment. Police cruisers, those are standard things, the school technology, that there may be other school requests that come forward. This is all we've received thus far. And then the sewer and the water, those are combined, all their various capital requests, and I didn't list them out individually, mainly just I wanted to give a high level overview tonight, but also because we don't have to fund those from free cash. So we don't have to worry about the detail at this point. But turning to, this large fire engine example and the highway road improvements, one thing I wanted to throw out there that we may have mentioned in the past is, another option for something like that is a capital expenditure exclusion. So starting with the first bullet, we've already talked about being careful about committing to too many leases. So with the fire engine, for example, we could look at a lease purchase, but right out of the gate, that's going to encumber a good chunk of free cash every year for however many years we do the lease purchase, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, whatever it might be. And this amount, if you add them up, say it's whatever, 1.1 million for those two things combined, that's really too small an amount to appropriately, in my opinion, bond and borrow and incur all those borrowing expenses and incur interest for something that's really not that big. So it's this funny kind of amount where it's too much to pay right out of great cash from free cash, but sort of too much, but too little to be able to justify borrowing. So they have this other option in Massachusetts called a capital expenditure exclusion, which it's kind of like a debt exclusion in that town meeting votes and it has to go to the ballot. So taxpayers have to vote at the ballot to raise their taxes. But the key thing is it's only 1 year and it fully funds it. And so there's no borrowing and no interest. And the next year it immediately disappears and it goes away. So it's a little temporary 1 year blip and then it goes away. And it's given the dollars that we're talking about, it's not an $86 million school project. It's only like $1 million fire truck and road project. The impact on taxpayers, relatively speaking, is not that big when you spread it across the whole tax base. So since last night, Biz and the town treasurer, John Ellard, and I were talking about this, because that we were curious if the town has done any capital exclusions in the past. And John was able to highlight to me that there were several. There was a library roof was done in this fashion for $300,000 back in 2007. And in 2008, part of the feasibility study for the new middle school, high school, for a little under 300,000 was done through this method as well. So, it's a big deal because it's not just a town meeting vote. It does require a ballot. So I don't know if that's something that we'll realistically have time to pursue for this May for these items. But I really just kind of wanted to start the conversation that depending where our free cash comes in, I think it's going to be unlikely we can fund those outright. I don't know that I want to keep encumbering big chunks of our free cash every year going forward. So I think this is something that makes sense for us to consider next year. And then going forward, Biz, as always, is going to keep looking at all of our local receipts each month. We'll keep looking at any potential, changes to our state revenues or the assessments, because we always have to look at both sides of the ledger. And as we look through the budget process, you all know, after the governor, right, it goes to the House, then the Senate, then the conference committee, and then ultimately back to the governor to sign. But, looking at the House Ways and Means to fix the Chapter 70 formula, that's something we're really focused on. And then Biz was reminding me, we put in this last, sub-bullet, when's the state budget going to be signed? Last year was just terrible how we were all in limbo for so long. I'm crossing my fingers, and I hope that the state budget is finalized, at the normal time frame this year, closer to July 1, so we don't have so much uncertainty. And then the usual next steps, this is similar to what I presented last year. We'll keep refining the numbers, keep working with the school department. We've had excellent communications with them. We are on the same page with them. They know where we're coming from and we know where they're coming from. We understand the difficulties they're under, but we are on the same page. We'll obviously keep working with you guys in the capital committee. And my hope is, we can finalize the budget with the selectmen on Tuesday, March 16th. And then presumably if it works for you guys, the next day would be Wednesday, March 17th would be really the most appropriate day to lock down the budget. And I did put in, as this parentheses here, April 6th if necessary, but that's really not, I don't want to go there because that's really cutting it like way too close to get changes made and things printed and posted, etc. Because April 6th is when I want the final document physically signed by the selectmen so we can post. And then lastly, just a big thank you to Biz and the whole finance team. Work closely in addition to Biz with the collector, the treasurer, the assessor, and the assistant town administrator. But Biz really takes the lead on all of this. And in particular, I mentioned last night that, she's not just responding to what I ask, she's very proactive. And you guys should rest assured that, things like, for example, the CARES Act, when that came up, that was all brand new and the county administered it instead of the state. So it was this whole new process and system, and Biz was all over it. I think more than virtually any other town, she got a huge number of requests in, and we're going to get our full allotment, and not every town accountant was able to do that. So I want to really thank her for those efforts. And that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to try to answer any questions, and Biz can obviously supplement where I fall short.
Doug, I don't know if you could put it back up, but could you put up the slide that has the pie chart with the breakdown of the revenues, the percentages, like where things are coming from?
Sure. There you go.
All right, so just doing some very rough math, but I'd like to get some sort of an idea of kind of what we're talking about. For every, let's say $1 million in capital expenditure exclusions that are proposed, that money would directly come from higher property taxes, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so it'd be basically $1 million divided by, call it 37,500, right? So you're talking about like roughly a 2.7% increase in your property taxes.
Yep.
To cover $1 million worth of capital expense exclusion.
Yep. I think that's good.
Number?
I think that's good, like back of the envelope math. But the key thing to remember is it's only 1 year. So you do it, it's
Right.
fully paid off and it's done. And then that 2.6 goes away the next year. That's the key thing to remember. It's not permanent.
Yeah, no, I think that's the case. I think it's it's sort of like it's sort of like our, the funds that we have, our stabilization funds, things like that. It's sort of like a last lever to pull, kind of, in my opinion, because if it's a one-time thing, but you do it every year, then it's an every year thing, you know?
Yep.
So it feels to me like it has to be this is a one-time, we're never doing, unless Armageddon hits again. We can't. It's artificially potentially adding property taxes that maybe people weren't prepared for, especially people that don't go to the meeting.
If I can just respond to that, John, I would characterize it a little differently because the way that I'm looking at it, I guess the first thing is voters get to choose. Or it's not anything that's imposed on anyone, and it's not just a town meeting vote where you historically get only 100 or 200, people attending. Generally at the ballot for any kind of exclusion, you get much higher turnout.
Right.
So voters get to decide, and certainly we're not going to buy a new fire engine every single year. So it's not designed to be done every year. But this isn't really like a COVID fiscal crisis kind of thing. I mean, this is something, again, the town first did it back in 2007 because when you're faced, if you have either one single item or a couple of items that total an amount that's just simply too much for us to afford out of our operating budget or out of free cash, but not really enough to warrant, borrowing over 10 or 20 years, but you need it, how else are you going to do it? So it's an appropriate funding mechanism, and voters get to decide. And so we certainly would not envision doing it every year, but I think as big things come up periodically, personally, I think it's a good option to look at.
Yeah, no, it's definitely an interesting option. Since I've been on the committee, we haven't done it and I haven't seen it. I just want to make sure that I try and get the contrast out there, is that, the alternatives to that, they could take the one-time hit on free cash if you had free cash that particular year. You could do the capital expense exclusion, which you just described, which is an option. or you could, do a lease purchase, which costs you a little bit of money of interest, but you're basically spending forward your free cash. So you're dedicating future free cash to definitely capital projects versus, 5 years from now, that free cash is used for something else that maybe isn't as necessary.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
And also-
it's a balance. You gotta consider, the town needs to understand and consider all options.
Yeah, and I'll get you in one sec, Biz. I just wanted to highlight to John, the other longer term kind of solution to this is this capital stabilization fund that we talked about. So the idea here is over time, if we can build up 600,000-700,000 in there, and then in the future, then we can just outright purchase, the fire engine without having to go to voters to, do an exclusion or anything else. That's the ideal thing. We're just not there yet. It's going to take some time to build that up. I'm sorry, Biz, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's okay. Just for a point of reference on this particular fire truck, we'd be looking at a 10-year lease to purchase at $70,000 per year. So it's going to cost us $100,000 to, fund a $600,000 fire truck. So cause and effect of borrowing the money, et cetera, is something important. And you committed yourself 10 years out. And, not that it would ever happen, but what happens if for some reason Rockland goes into a deficit free cash, which is not unheard of, you don't have the money to pay for it. So, you have some big cause and effects there that you need to think about.
Yeah, no, I understand. I hope that they, and again, to your point, you said we back of the napkin that, I just hope that we make it very clear to voters when they go to do it, that this is basically what it trickles down to. This is how much it's going to cost more in your property tax budget. If they decide to go for it, well, that's entirely up to them. But there are other options for sure. So, all right, well, that's great presentation. Anybody else have questions for Doug on that?
Nope, thanks, Doug.
Wow. Nothing. Okay. Unless somebody's on mute and they're talking, I don't see mouths moving, so we'll call that good. Biz, were you going to take us through anything with, I know you forwarded out, in fact, I didn't even check because I was kind of busy this morning.
I
Did you
did
forward
send you-
that out to everyone in terms of the different budgets?
I sent that to the Rockland Finance Committee, so I don't have the individual addresses. Everything was sent to you.
Okay.
Or the
Everything was-
Rockland Finance Committee email address.
All right. So for everybody's interest, again, I apologize. I didn't get a chance to look at it between everything I was doing before the meeting. I saw that they're all there. We do have the different budgets from several different departments. I don't think we have the entire, you gave me like sections of budgets, which is kind of good to kind of absorb it and go through it, but I don't think
That's
we have,
responsible parties.
do we
So
have
if you
one?
look at if you look at the fire department,
Right,
he's in charge of dispatch, emergency services in the fire department. You
Okay.
look at highway, Dave's in charge of the tree, the snow and ice, the drainage, the highway. I think there's something else in there. So the representatives that I have there, that's the major department, but then they've got all the sub departments under them. And they're
Okay,
each in
no.
one folder.
yeah, that's perfect. I'm looking on here to see if there is one for the entire budget in one shot, if that was delivered to me or not.
I sent you the, I sent you that
think you did.
Monday, I think, of the big budget. Because we sent it to you so you would have it because we were going to be presenting it to the board. Now, if you'd like, I can show my screen for what we have, if that's the way you want to go for the moment. I can resend everything out tomorrow. I'll see if we can set
No,
up.
I'm in there now. I'm in there now. I can forward all the emails that I got. I got an email. Yeah, I got the revenue comparison that you sent out. That's going back to January.
Yeah, that's old. You want February 1st or February 2nd would be the budget presentation. That was for tonight. And then today I sent you all of your budget schedules as per the calendar you gave us.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't get the only thing the first email I got from you was on Tuesday. with the FY '22 preliminary budget.
Preliminary budget, that's the one that is the important one.
That's the full
tonight.
budget. Okay.
Do you want me to bring that up, John?
Yeah, if you want to bring it up and walk us through it, that would be fine. I mean, it looks from your high level summary that you gave us at the last meeting,
Mhm.
not a lot has, I know there's obviously changes, but it looks like some of the bottom line numbers are real close to what you presented before.
Right, originally we had a $1.2 million deficit,
Right.
and through an awful lot of hard work, we're down to a zero deficit, but there is some impact to the school and the town.
Okay.
This page here is a general overview of the revenues. As we know, the tax revenue goes up and down each year. That's pretty standard. Our debt exclusion did go up. And debt exclusion, as you know, covers the debt exclusion income that we receive covers the debt exclusion debt. So that's a wash. If you see our cherry sheet aid, we had been hoping for a lot more. So we're getting 18.2, which is slightly above our 21 numbers. It's 187,000 roughly more than we had gotten for 21. Probably one of the biggest changes here is our estimated local receipts. When we started this process, we were planning on 6.9 million on local receipts. Due to the income coming in from the cannabis tax revenue, of which you asked me last time, the cannabis is taxed at 20%, of which the town receives 3% of the taxes. So we're estimating, based on what we have coming in right now, we could have about 480,000 in cannabis revenue is included in our local receipts revenue budget. So that's the biggest change on that side. We are researching the cannabis revenues right now. It appears that they did not pay us for the month of September, which is about 30,000. We haven't gotten paid for December yet, which is about 50. So between those two to date, we would have brought in about 218,000 from July through December. So we estimate the 480,000 for cannabis for 22 would be pretty accurate, and that's something we can get across to the DOF pretty simply. Any question on the revenue aspect? No? Okay. So our budgets were pretty much the same, and as Doug highlighted earlier, our biggest impacts are going to be with the, right here, if you look in the summaries, the town meeting elections. We reduced from our original thought process of 63,000, dropped it by 20, bring it to 43,000, which we feel will cover all the election information town meetings that we have. The dispatching is 373,000. There's two components to the dispatching. One is the dispatch itself, and the second is software and equipment. We can't touch the software and equipment, but we did touch the dispatching at 150. And going forward, for argument's sake, we will put this in the budget every year, and if we need to adjust, we will adjust depending on that year. Then, you know, unfortunately here, the big hit right now is the Rockland Public Schools. From what we had hoped we were going to get, we thought we'd get 26,609, and that's roughly $400,000 more in the Chapter 78. But in effect, we're getting 26,125,939 is what the budget is. So that budgeted decrease is roughly 85,000 from 21 to 22. And as Doug had spoken to earlier, this is something that we're working very closely with the school department so we can address their concerns and anything we need to do to help us all get through the situation. But the key target is going to be the state aid. If we get more state aid, that will make a very big difference. One of the other things that the school's, you know, working on, they've got some different granting issues that came out in the last stimulus package. That's something they're looking at, but they don't want to use that for regular budgeting purposes. They feel that's a specific need revenue, and that's what they're going to try and accomplish by going back to the state. The highway department,
So, Biz, just so, so again, the school's looks like it's taking some of the brunt of this. And what you're saying is that if everything stays the way it is, we're gonna be able to cover our budget shortfall with those three big categories that Doug laid out, and you kind of went into a little more detail just now.
correct.
But if additional numbers come in from the state, if we get additional revenues from somewhere else in the state, specifically the cherry sheets that you mentioned, that is the thought that we would, well, not the cherry sheets, the chapter 70, if that comes in a little bit higher, is the thought that the town would redirect some of that money close, more to the school, like a different percentage, or what are we talking about?
We would be following the standard percentage aspect. So let's say we got another 100,000 in state aid chapter 70. Well, 70,000 would go to the school, 30,000 would go to the town. So it would stick to the same 70-30 split. But one of the things is that, the schools, they're so good at what they do. They're filing for grants, the federal grants, the education grants that are now being allowed through the federal government will help offset some of this issue for them. But again, they're working very diligently to help us get the money restored. Okay.
Okay.
So then we have highway department, which everybody was told pretty much level fund, which they did. Highway is going to take a little bit of a hit of 32,000. And after talking all of these cuts that we've talked about, each department, we sat with them, discussed it with them, and they were in agreement. They had no problem with what we were doing here. And if you notice, it says a 1% increase, non-contracting union, and contracts are in negotiation. This is in here just to cover what we need to do. So that summary is pretty much everything in a nutshell. So when we get down to the nitty gritty, which John, you'll get this out to everybody tomorrow.
Everything's been sent out.
Okay, so this is the nitty gritty down here. So this is the department by department and how things will be running. So I think it'd be prudent for all of you to take a look at this, but it's summarized in the pages up above. There's been no real increases anywhere. Everything's pretty flat to keep us going. The biggest increases, I'm going to go back a little bit here, John, is in the benefits. That is one of the biggest hits that we take as a community. For instance, the retirement went up by just about 200,000. Unemployment, we did put up a little bit. We put a little bit of buffer in there because of the economy and what's been going on. The group insurance has gone up about 270,000. And then Medicare is equated to wage. So those were our biggest increases are. So we went from 12.4 million to 12.9 million. That in itself is a $500,000 increase. So overall increase wise, due to the pandemic, we will see an increase. We have an estimate of between 7% and 9%. So we're just covering ourselves with that and taking the higher percentage. As we get a little bit closer, it may change.
Can I get this in Excel too, please?
Are you going to change it?
No, I'm not one of those people that's gonna like, I'll do my thing and then you do your thing and the trade.
As long as you're not gonna change my numbers, you can have it in Excel.
No, I do like to insert a column and try and pull out like dollars and cents and percentages and kind of, make things sense in my head. So,
Yep.
I don't need to, you send it to me, you'll never see it again, but I'm not going to send it back to you, but I'm going to ask, it'll help me kind of frame better questions around.
Right. So if you look at the benefits, it's overall about a 5% increase on benefits.
Okay.
If you average it out, went up 500,000, 5% would be 6, so just under 5.
Yeah.
Is that group insurance the actual number now, or is that still just an estimate from, based on what they said that it's going to come in at a little bit more?
Well, what we had to do is we took a historical information from January of last year or December of last
Yeah.
year to December of this year, so we could get a number of employees, cost averaging, who segued from regular insurance into now retiree insurance. Because when people do retire, we're responsible for that as well. So you have 4 people retire, you now hired 4 more people. Well, your cost went down a little bit for the retiree, but you still have that original cost. So
But it is an estimate still, is though, right? But it is still,
Oh,
an estimate. Yeah, that was his
Yeah,
question.
it's still an estimate, but that, I don't see that changing. I see that
Okay.
probably being a pretty solid number.
Yay.
Not really.
Yeah, no, I mean, 5% year over year, it's unsustainable if we keep that up, but.
Unfortunately, that's the market. We know of some communities where their retirement went up 8%. You know, and your retirement is based on certain actuarial data. You know, there's very little that you can do about it. So that's what we have, and that's our biggest hit, actually. So out of a $600,000 deficit, roughly 500,000 equates to benefit.
Okay.
So that's kind of the high level here. And John, I will send you over the I will send you these in Excel.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Just for my own humor, I can
Yeah.
go through there and kind of, it helps me understand the data too, so.
Mhm.
All right, that's great. I mean, I follow where you're going. I can see that's where the big hits are.
Okay.
And then, you know, I'm sure that we're already doing this, but, you know, the big thing that's hanging out there is the whole idea of these contracts that need to be negotiated, that hopefully this, where we're at, is keep being taken into consideration. I'm sure it is, but that's, you know, we're not in a position to kind of handle, you know, money pouring out everywhere right now. So hopefully that'll help us negotiate something that'll work better for the town. But in any case, that's that. Anything else, Doug? Did you have anything else you wanted to add?
I did not at this point. Thank you.
Okay. And did anyone else have any final questions for Biz or Doug? Okay.
John,
Go
John,
ahead.
if I may, if you can just review the schedules that I sent you, that was based on the handwritten note that we received. Can you just check to make sure that you've got everybody covered and that we didn't miss anybody
As
on the
far as,
department reviews?
yeah, the department reviews, I think I was talking to Bobby about that briefly today, and I think that I'm just looking at my handwritten notes on it right now. Yeah, we had the assessors set up for February 10th. So I've got a little bit of work to do to contact different departments. You're one of them, Biz. And just, you know, have a quick call with some folks. I did see the Excel spreadsheet that you guys sent around. And I saw the email from Scott, you know, had some questions and things like that. So it looked accurate. I did compare it. But I also wanted to compare my notes with Julie tonight to make sure that we have everything correct as well on my end. So I think we're good as far as that goes. I mean, as it stands right now, February 10th is going to be social voc tech, as well as collector, assessor, treasurer, clerk, accounting, and board of selectmen presentation. Though, you know, again, I'm going to talk to these different department heads depending on how much movement and activity they have going on in their budget, especially if a lot of them don't have much going on. If they wanted to submit an email describing what's going on, that would be perfectly fine. Like if they're not submitting any articles and they have a couple of movements in their budget related to contractual increases, they can give me a quick summary email, and that would be sufficient for me. Certainly if they want to come in front of the group, they can. And then we can kind of review that as part of the process. But again, they're certainly all welcome to come as well. February 17th, I've got police and fire and IT, as well as veterans and youth and council and aging. Is that what you have, Julie? Yeah, Julie.
Julie's muted.
You're muted, Julie.
Yeah, I agree with that, John.
Okay. All right, and then February 24th is pretty much the Dave show.
Yeah,
You get water and sewer, or not. I should say not water. That'll be Joe
Joe.
LaPointe,
Mhm.
and then we'll have sewer, highway, trees, and drainage. And then in addition to that, we'll have parks, and then the building department. Is that what you have, Julie?
yeah, that's what I got.
Okay, and then we're looking at March 3rd for schools, Board of Health, library, and the CPA Historical Committee.
I don't have Board of Health.
I have Board of Health on that one.
I have CPA and historical.
CPA and Historical. I know we had some conversation around Board of Health as to whether or not, I think that what we decided, and Biz, I think you gave us some insight on that too, was that we would kind of push them towards the back of the agenda, just to give them, additional time if something came up or whatever it was.
I think that was more the sewer, John,
Okay,
because they're in the process of hiring the new superintendent.
right.
So I think that was the sewer we were gonna, put last if we have to. That was gonna be movable if necessary. I'm not really
Yeah.
sure where they are in the hiring process.
Okay,
But the Board of Health, you wanna keep the Board of Health there because they have substantial budgets.
yep. All right, so March 3rd, we'll tentatively have Board of Health in there. And then that kind of puts us in line for, now, when you gave us your calendar, or I got your calendar, I think from Biz, it mentioned something that looked like, and what I mean by your calendar, I mean the calendar that talked about, when town meeting was going to be, and then kind of dialing everything back from there. It looked like you had on yours that the Board of Selectmen would vote after the Finance Committee finished. And I had a question in my notes from last week. I thought that the charter called for the Board of Selectmen to vote on the budget first, and then the Finance Committee would vote and consider the Board of Selectmen's opinion on each budget. Where am I off on that one?
Yeah, let me take a look here. Hang on one
I think
sec.
that's the way it's been, John, in other years. We get the budget after the Board of Selectmen have voted on it.
Yeah, so so I think I see what you're saying. But again, my idea is, the selectmen would vote on the 16th, and then you guys would take your vote on the 17th.
Mhm.
Okay, so your thought is that they would vote on the 16th.
Yeah.
And then we would enter our final votes on the 17th,
Yes,
17th of March.
yes.
Okay, and then if we vote on it by the 17th of March and we have it finalized by then, you've got, well, actually, at that point, you have plenty of time. We're way ahead of you.
Yeah.
Right, because the town meeting is May 3rd, right?
Yep, first Monday in May. Yep. So I mean, this is I like this time frame because it gives us a little cushion. You know what I mean? And if we get some new information at the last minute and we need to revise things, and you guys and the selectmen need to take additional votes, then it gives us a little bit of cushion. But I feel like this is feasible.
All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to keep March 10th as an available. That'll be the date that we'll really go through the budget and hit as many of the line items that we can. And then we'll finalize any voting that we need to do on the 17th and complete that. And, that'll give us, to Doug's point, if something does come up, hopefully we'll know by the 17th, so we'll be able to schedule another meeting. But then we'll try and put a meeting on for like mid-April. So we'll take some time between mid-March and mid-April. That will be, we'll schedule the meeting out, and then if we need to meet sooner than that, we will. We'll just wait to hear from the town if there's something that we need. Okay? Now, Biz, you mentioned free cash was not in.
Correct.
Or Doug mentioned it, one or the other. Any thought on that? Is this going to be like a last minute surprise, or is it just something that it's definitely coming like this week or whatever? Or
Well, I expected last week. Was dealing with the DOR last week and again this week. So I sent some information yesterday. I didn't hear back today, so I'll follow up.
okay,
I definitely follow up all the time with them, so
yeah, no,
I'm more anxious to get this done than you are, believe me.
I can only imagine. I just didn't know if you had any insight as to when you thought that would come. It sounds like you're playing the waiting game, and I appreciate that. And then, again, the stuff that they're voting on in DC, and I noticed that they're talking a couple of $1 trillion or some crazy number that I'll never see in my life, or most of us never will. But whatever is in there, has there been any, like, hey, this is in there, that's really going to help us out? Any state and local aid? Because I know that was something that they cut out of the last, help for the COVID. So
I think that's unlikely, unfortunately. It's so discouraging because what's so weird to me about it is every single community, red state, blue state, purple state, every community is experiencing this to some degree. So you'd think that would be something they could all get around, but I don't think it's going to happen. I think there's certainly more consensus about money going to schools, which is great. But I don't think what you asked is going to materialize, unfortunately.
okay, all right. And you had, and again, I'm going to take a closer look at all the budgets and everything else, and I'm sure we'll be talking, and you'll present sometime. I'm assuming it'll be you next week that will present for the Board of Selectmen, kind of the town hall budget. Doug, but I know that the town was looking for some help in a couple of areas, one around planning and kind of paperwork involved with, permits and zoning and stuff like that. And then you were also, I think you were looking for somebody else for something else. So I'm assuming that you'll be presenting on all
Sure.
of that next week.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Any final questions for Doug and Biz? All right, we appreciate you guys joining in. You're welcome to stay if you like.
Doug, have you heard anything about getting a vaccine in town? Do you know where our supply is?
Yeah, so we have no supply. So just so you're aware, we have put a request in with the state. We've requested 1,950 doses, which we're going to gear toward, there's a whole hierarchy that the state DPH, the state government's put out. So they've just started in phase 2. And in phase 2, the top priority are people age 75 and over. So that's what we're targeting. We have a request in for 1,950. We haven't heard back exactly what we're going to actually get. What we've heard anecdotally from some other towns that have requested a similar number, they request, say, 2,000 doses, they get 100. So we'll see what we get. Whatever we get, we will push out in a vaccine clinic, and we will, highlight that and promote that extensily. If we only end up getting a very small number of doses, like 100 doses, we'll have to finish up the end of the phase 1 category, make sure all the phase 1 people are done before we get into anybody in phase 2. But if we got the full 1,950, we'd be able to finish up the end of phase 1 and also hit, probably most of all the folks in Rockland age 75 and over. And one other note just related to that, the Board of Health, I should say, is doing a COVID testing clinic this weekend, March 6th and 7th at the Memorial Park School. And there's a lot of information. We posted it on Facebook, Twitter, and right on the town website. You can't miss it. But there's no out-of-pocket cost that the testing company will bill your insurance company. And if you don't have insurance, there's no cost to the individual. So we got testing going this weekend. There'll probably be other weekends as well. And as soon as we find out what allocation we actually get with the vaccine, we'll do a clinic.
Doug, are we ready to operationally handle it? Like, do we have freezers and?
Yep, we are.
And, I've heard not so much horror stories, like these heroic stories, I'll call them, of, where they had to, all of a sudden they had to give out 1,000 vaccines before they went bad, and they're putting shots in arms and people coming from everywhere. Do we have hey, if everything kind of falls apart plan to, get people in here? Or do we have some sort of thing?
Yeah,
like that?
we do. And the plan, it's called an EDS plan, emergency dispensing sites. Our emergency dispensing site for a large mass scale vaccination is at the middle school and high school. We've already have a plan that's approved. We've worked with the school department on that. We have volunteers in place. We have firefighters and paramedics that are also able. We have CERT team members. And it's really, I'm saying the words right now, but really all the work's being done by the health agent and the fire chief. The two of them have different pieces of it, but they're jointly working very hard every single day on this. So I would love it if we have a problem where we have thousands of doses we have to figure out how to give out. But unfortunately, my fear is, we're going to, like every other community, because of the constraints, coming out of the federal government and originally coming from the manufacturers, we're not going to get everything we ask for. But yes.
Hey, Doug,
yeah.
Can you clarify something you said a minute ago? Testing clinic, billing insurance, and no cost to anybody there. If they don't have insurance, then it's not going to cost the person being tested anything. Who is picking up that cost?
So it must be the testing company, because the town is not incurring any cost with that. So I think they are probably getting like a federal grant, is my guess, that's covering the testing side of it. So no cost to the customer, and I think it's a federal grant through the testing company. So we looked at a variety of different companies. There were some that, depending on the mix of people covered by insurance or not, the town had potential liability of up to $4,000 a day. And so that was making us really nervous. And so we were able to find this other company where there's no cost to the town other than, minor things like a police detail or a custodian at the school, that type of thing. Oh, and it's a drive-through clinic, I should highlight. No appointment necessary.
And again, when is that?
So it's this upcoming weekend, which is February 6th, February 7th, Saturday and Sunday. And on the town website, there's a lot of information about it. And particularly, if anybody was going to attend or go, they should download the registration form. You should fill out the registration form ahead of time so that when you're there, you're ready to go and get in and out quick.
Who's going to be administering the doses when you finally get them?
Yep. So it will be a combination of, we have school nurses that have been willing to volunteer, which we greatly appreciate. We also have volunteers that are nurses that live in the community. Maybe they work at area hospitals or whatever. They've offered. And we also have our own Rockland Fire Department paramedics that can also administer the vaccines. So we think we'll be well stocked with, and there could be, I don't know what the exact number will be. It depends on the number of doses. If we'll have, 10 people, 20 people, 30 people administering doses at the same time. But, the fire chief, he's all about operations. So he's already got it all planned out, segmenting people through, making sure they wait the appropriate amount of time, and the next wave comes in. And so we've got a good plan in place.
And the other piece of that is the community emergency response team under the direction of the chief is going to be activated for that. I'm on that, and we'll be doing a lot of the administrative stuff. So freeing up the medical professionals to be injecting while we do some of the paperwork and manage the queues and things like that, just to be the most efficient we can be. Exactly.
I'm very glad you said that. And one of the things in particular that we're most concerned about is this top tier in phase 2, the 75 and older. Many of those folks are having difficulty, dealing with, websites and computer programs. And so with that first phase that we look at, we could likely need that CERT team to help with that administration, probably even more so than other segments. So yes, good point.
That's great stuff. All right, so we've gone over the schedule. We all, everyone should have, actually, Julie, did you put out I'm not sure if I saw that from you or not. Did you put out any minutes?
Yes.
I did.
John, can you send out that schedule?
Well, in the minutes is where the schedule is, Joe.
Oh, all right.
So.
I got them. I didn't get to review them.
The minutes of the January 20th has the schedule on it.
All right.
All
Did you
right, I,
send
didn't
them?
look at- I got them, but I didn't review them yet. All right, thanks.
I think, Julie, you sent those to maybe my personal email address, right?
I don't know. I think I sent it out to the.
There you are. I got you.
Leona, there's one typo in there.
Oh, no kidding.
There's always somebody.
Typo.
The word timing is spelled wrong in paragraph 3.
Always somebody. All
I
right.
know. But
All right, let me do this. Nice, Bill.
Got it. Thank you.
All right. So I've got it here. I've got one that says minutes October 21st. That's not it, though.
Yes, that was one that we never approved before.
right.
Okay, well, that's fine. But I'm looking for the minutes from
And
the
then we have
January meeting. Can you send it, could you send them to Rockland or send it to Finance Committee at rockland-ma.gov? Like the one that respond to the email that I send out for the agenda and attach it there. Can you do that?
Yeah.
So two. Okay. All right, so I will share these on my desktop and we'll scroll through them. So the first one I have is okay, so I have October 15th is a set of meeting notes that we didn't vote on, is that right? And October 21st?
No, just the 21st.
Okay, just the 21st, okay. So let me share my screen here. Ba-ba-ba. You all right there, Julie?
Yeah.
All righty then. I've got like a 2-page view here. Can anybody see my screen?
Yeah, it looks good.
All right. Okay, so absent was Bill Principe and Dan. By the way, Dan has resigned from the committee. Hopefully, after tonight, Megan will be all fired up. All right. Okay, town accountant.
What's Megan's last name? Megan,
Rooney?
Yeah, Rooney.
Rooney?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Give your last name, that's it. All right, here we go. So 10,000 a month savings. I'm just reading through this if anybody has any questions on it. This was prior to the articles that we went through for November 16th town meeting.
That's why I don't have a November minutes because of the town meeting
Right.
that I didn't make, but there was no meeting before the town meeting.
We weren't required to meet because the town doesn't have to vote on. So
Okay, so
I think actually somebody started a meeting and closed it, but we didn't do anything. So.
We did. We opened and closed the meeting with no agenda and no discussion.
okay, so that's why I was.
And no quorum.
And no quorum. Thank you, Craig. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, with that, so I've had the meeting notes up there. I've kind of thumbed through them. I'm not good at catching the spelling errors, so that will be up to Bill. I appreciate it. But I will entertain a motion to approve the meeting notes as written.
Motion.
Second, Bill Stewart.
I have a motion from Craig and a second from Bill Stewart. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, so if you could take care of those, Julie.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Now I'm just gonna go back to my email. You forwarded over that other one, right?
December 16th.
Yeah, did you send that?
Yeah. They were all in the same email, 3 of them.
3 or 4.
For whatever reason, I don't have them. So if anybody has them and they want to share their desktop, they can, or if you want to, the one we really need is the one that has the,
The one that has the schedule was January 20th.
you know where you sent it to? I got,
I sent it to the Rockland Finance Committee.
can you guys hear me?
Yep.
You can?
Yep.
All right.
Do you want me to try to share it, John?
If you have it, yeah, do you need me to do something to help let you share?
We're looking at we want to look at the 16th. You just had that up, didn't you?
Yeah,
It's,
we have one from October that apparently those missed, but this is what we're talking about is,
That's the one we just voted on.
yeah,
Is
so
that my screen?
look at the one from January. I don't see your screen. Did you push the share screen button, Joe?
I did, but
And then you got to select what you're sharing from the, like, it usually gives you like a little list.
you want that one?
There we go, January 20th,
There you
perfect.
go. Okay.
Okay. All right, so scroll down. So let's see who's absent here. So Dan, Sheila, and Dan. Sheila cannot vote on this one. If you scroll down. And this immunity over town revenue. Okay, I'm running under or 428. That number hasn't moved much. Keep going.
That is, here's the schedule, okay.
Okay. So February 10th is South Shore Voc Tech, town manager, accounting, collector, treasurer, town clerk, and assessors. For the most part, and I have to just check, I believe that's all.
And we're gonna, Julie, are we adding, I don't know if I can even
Adding
do
the
it.
Board of Health to March 3rd.
March 3rd, yeah, all right.
Okay. And on this first, so for the 10th, Social Voc Tech, town clerk, accounting. The Social Voc Tech will do their own presentation. The town manager will be Doug, that's fine. I'm going to take care of with Doug is, I have the collector, I have the assessor, I have the treasurer, and I'm not sure who has the clerk. I don't know if we assign somebody to the clerk, but I'll just do the clerk as well. I don't think anybody else was assigned to the clerk, right?
No.
Okay, so I'll take care of that for the clerk. If you could, we can make that adjustment.
I have the library.
You said what?
I have the library.
You have the library, right? Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, there's no name next to it. Julie didn't have a name, yeah, okay.
Julie, do you want to, well, actually,
Liaisons.
you can edit it, Joe, if you want to add Lori's name.
Why, it's
You
not,
gotta- You got to click enable editing. It's in the yellow bar at the top. It says enable. There's a big
sorry,
white-
I got everybody's. Editing, I can't even. Did I just lose it?
Yep. Now
No,
you
just
click
click
on-
that white box. Enable editing.
I don't even see it.
Go 6 inches to your left and up. 6 inches to your left, left. The other left.
Yeah, the other left.
I don't see it.
We can all see it.
In the yellow,
Yeah.
Big
Go
yellow
down.
box.
Go to the left.
I'm sorry. I must have.
Not that far.
No, not that far.
No, I'm going back now.
See where it says
Go up.
enable editing? Above veterans right there? There you go.
Okay, sorry. So,
All right, so Lori is the library.
Hmm.
I think we've got, all right, and we're gonna add, all right, so February 17th is gonna be police, fire, IT. I've got IT department, I believe. That's me. I'll get them ready to go. Bobby's got the police, I believe. Fire is Bill Principe, right? Youth is Jeff. You're gonna call the youth commission director.
Yep.
Veterans, Bill Stewart, you were gonna call veterans and council on aging. And I think that was it for the 17th, okay?
Yep.
So again, just have a quick call with those folks. If there's anything that they want to review, try and bring it back here at the end after we review everybody. You know, so for the 17th, you know, at the end of the meeting on the 10th, we'll just spend a few minutes. We got police, we got fire, we got IT, veterans, youth. Is there anything coming up? You know, anything, I mean, you want to highlight what you had for a conversation with them. We just want to be a week ahead. And then if you say, oh yeah, the fire department's really looking for this, or they need that, or the, you know, the fire truck discussion, that kind of thing, that would be the time at the end of the meeting on the 10th. And then if we have any questions, we can give those to you. So for example, Bill, if it's the fire department, hey, can you ask them to be prepared to talk about 1, 2, 3, these three things, and then get that information over to Scott so he can do that. Okay. So that's the basic game plan that we followed last year. That's the plan we'll follow this year, with the whole idea that these folks show up and they feel like they have some idea of what we're interested in talking about in addition to the normal stuff, and that'll be it. All right. With that, I appreciate you making those updates, Joe. You want to scroll down the bottom here? I don't know if we saw the bottom.
I'm not scrolling.
There you go. Keep going.
My mouse doesn't want to agree with the. Is there another page? Oh, was
All
there
right.
another thing?
No, I think that's it.
That was
Looks
it.
like it. Meeting to adjourn. All right. So with that, I'll entertain a vote to approve the meetings minutes with the amendments that Joe made for this particular one, which is January.
Judy, I'm assuming you updated your
Motion to
version.
approve.
Okay, motion to approve from Craig. Can I have a second?
Second.
Second by Lori. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, thank you. I'm good at this point. We can, you know, if there's any discussion, anything else people want to talk about or discuss?
Did we have another set of minutes we didn't look at?
Set a minute for December 16th.
I don't have those again, so I'm
Uh,
unable to bring them up. So Joe, if you have them,
So find it again.
like my,
It's just a one page, so.
What did I do with it?
it's the weirdest thing, Julie. I have every email you've ever sent me, but whatever you sent me before, and even today.
Well, that's funny. Julie's email came to my phone today, but it didn't come to my computer. I had to send it again from my phone to my computer. But
Well, maybe
Lost.
we should renew a master sheet of all the addresses.
where is? I lost it. Or I don't see what I did with it now.
John, what is your address you want me to send things to?
You should send everything to Finance Committee.
Spelt out?
Yep, no spaces. Finance Committee, all one word, if you will, at rockland-ma.gov.
Okay,
The same email that I send out stuff to you guys when I email.
Where is it?
I thought that's what I sent.
Yeah,
Everything.
and I've had it, I've got it up on multiple screens, multiple programs. Whatever reason, it's not there.
I can't get it to come up on my screen when I click on share, but I can see it on my computer.
Okay.
What the hell is it? October 21st.
Are we ever going to get back into town hall?
I don't know.
Eventually, once the state of emergency is declared, I'm sure we'll all be back in and have lives again.
Yeah, I'll just add to that when, when it's safe from a public health perspective, believe me, no one's more anxious than me, but it's not safe now to do it.
Mhm.
Yeah. I get my shot on Friday.
There you go.
Good for you.
All right. With that, if Joe, if it's too much trouble, don't worry about it. We'll have.
Yeah,
it
I'm
ready.
having trouble finding the minutes.
We'll have it ready for next
I have
meeting.
here, I just can't, on my share screen, they're not there for some reason.
Okay, we can hold it
Okay.
till next week, next
We'll,
time.
we'll pick that up next week. With that, I'll entertain a motion.
Wait a minute, just found it.
All right. Make up your mind, will you, Joe?
Sorry.
You know,
Like the
That's
progressive
I'm not used
commercial.
to sharing in my Zoom meetings.
all right, Joe, you can't, Joe, Sheila, and Lori cannot vote on this. Is this meeting here? Okay. All right. Overview of the budget, the debt inclusion. Is it inclusion or exclusion?
Exclusion.
Exclusion,
It's exclusion.
okay.
New growth, limited development of Rockland land. Okay. Keep going, Joe. Okay. This is the fencing discussion. Okay. All right, with that, I'll entertain a motion to approve with the people at the top of the document there I mentioned would be excluded. From
I'll make a
voting.
motion to approve, Bill
A
Stewart.
motion from Bill Stewart,
Second,
second from Bill Principe. Okay. All in favor?
aye.
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 Okay, all opposed? None? Okay. All right, perfect. All right, good stuff. Thanks, everyone. I appreciate it. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Make a motion.
Motion
Second.
from Bill Principe and second from Bill Stewart. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thanks, everyone. We'll see you here next, the February 10th, same time. Thanks again.
Good night.
Aye.
Good night. Stay safe,
Aye,
everybody.
guys. Thank you.
You too.
Bye, everyone.
All right.